This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Through the Treaty of Paris in 1783, Britain vested the United States with an immense swath of western country that stretched from the middle of the Great Lakes in the north to the Mississippi River at its western border and the 31st parallel in the south. That addition of land doubled the territorial girth of the original 13 colonies, creating a situation rife with both possibility and vulnerability. Not only was the United States a fledgling republic in a world of powerful empires, but it had also just acquired, at least on paper, its own domestic empire in need of protection from those competing imperial regimes in North America. This book examines the peculiar situation endemic to the young American nation as both a postcolonial republic and a contiguous domestic empire. It does so by looking at where these dual political demands inevitably collided in the federal project of Western state formation. The main focus of the study is Wisconsin, part of the central government's first experiment in state building in the Old Northwest during the early national era, and the last territory and state formed entirely from the original Northwest Territory. While anchored in Wisconsin, however, this is the story of the first formal national endeavor to build republican states wholesale out of the public domain, a public domain that, at the time, largely encompassed Indian homelands. The history of United States territories boasts a venerable historiography created by generations of Western historians dating back to Frederick Jackson Turner. However, over the last few decades, the field has been left largely fallow, a fact all the more surprising given the efflorescence of interest in placing American history within an Atlantic or even a global context. The recent trend of thinking comparatively about U.S. history in a wider world context has yielded many vital insights, among which I want to highlight two. First, that the United States was a post-colonial republic, and second, concomitantly, that it was a settler empire. To be post-colonial does not merely mean that the original 13 Confederate states had formerly belonged to the British Empire. It has the broader metaphysical meaning, as political scientist Sudipta Kaviraj suggests, that some of its characteristic features could not have arisen without the particular colonial history that went before. That is, white Americans imagined their political independence and national identity out of their experiences as British colonial subjects, and relatedly, the U.S. postcoloniality, its emergence and expansion as an independent nation, was structured on ongoing colonial relations with stateless populations of African Americans, Native peoples, and eventually Mexican Americans. This last point, that independence freed the United States to govern its own colonial territories and subjugated populations, speaks to the country's distinct identity as a settler nation. Sometimes called Second World countries, settler nations such as the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ulster, South Africa, and Israel negotiate double identities of belonging to both European First World traditions and non-Western Third World regions. These settler societies possess an ambivalent double history as both colonized and colonizers, and, on gaining freedom from their imperial rulers, settler states acquire a new kind of political doubleness, as post-colonial nations that have now assumed sovereign colonial rule over appropriated domestic territories.